were talking about was, at this point, the various things that we do after someone passes away. And the basic point in all of this is there's many things we do for the deceased, and there's many things we do for ourselves to heal. And some more for one, some more for the other, some are clearly for both. When we speak of Kaddish, the idea of Kaddish is most significantly for the departed. Kaddish is so super significant. Ideally, by the funeral, you hope there are 10 Jewish men, 13 and older. If you're involved in arranging a funeral for someone who's not religious, sometimes it's challenging. 10 men that are Jewish, but it's very important, if that's possible, to say Kaddish at the funeral. But more significant than if you can or can't say Kaddish at the funeral is the idea of Kaddish for the year. Very important. Anyone you know who's not religious, so it's not an automatic and a given, if you can arrange Kaddish to be said for them, if you can convince them to arrange it, there's infinite organizations that will do it for a fee. I know someone that does it for just a very small amount of money, just whatever the person wants to give, which is usually who I direct people that I'm close to that are not religious, because the bigger the price tag, the less likely they're going to do it. But it's very critical for the soul. And therefore, for us, when we know someone who's not religious and who passed away, it's not at all a given that Kaddish will be said every day, 3 times a day for 11 months. If you're speaking to the person, so easy. I always say, I'll arrange it for you. I will. I'll pay the money for you. What do I have to give the guy? $50? He'll say Kaddish for a year. Trust me, it's totally worth it. Very important. Kaddish elevates the soul. In terms of the survivors, the mourners, what most is significant for the mourners is the Shiva. The Shiva is so significant for us to heal. And I've really spoken to people that are not religious, maybe becoming religious, and have sat Shiva and not sat Shiva, for people that have passed in their life. And it's such an incredible difference. It's such an unbelievable difference when you have the structure and the comfort and the rules of Shiva to properly mourn and properly honor the deceased. We have the most intense focus on helping the one who passed away until the burial. That's why we're supposed to do almost nothing but make sure that person gets buried. And then, of course, there's 7 days of mourning, which then become 30 days, at which point there are no longer laws of mourning unless it is for a parent. And then the mourning for the parent extends with 11 months of Kaddish. And then after the Kaddish is done with 11 months, still all the other laws of mourning extend for 12 months. And then after that, annually on the day of the Yahrzeit. All of the laws of mourning are honoring the deceased and our way of expressing grief in a healthy way. In terms of someone else saying Kaddish for someone, as long as the person has already lost a parent and therefore is allowed to say Kaddish, anyone can say Kaddish for anyone. And as I'm saying, it's very important to help people that wouldn't do it otherwise to arrange Kaddish. And then for the mourner, immersing in the grief, which is what we do for 7 days. We just are, everything in our life stops. We're just focused on grieving. And that's very healing because we know we're really doing it and then we're supposed to stop. And that's why at the end of 7 days, the custom is to shout at the mourners to get out. It's almost like psychologically, sometimes you just want to stay in that bubble, which is good for that time, but obviously not healthy to extend it. But it's really important to realize it's a channel for us to express our pain, our loss. We have enormous loss, but we try to understand that for the one that passed away, they're okay. They're in a good place. We're in pain. We're in grief. We have a loss, but not them. The Lubavitcher Rebbe sent such a letter to Arik Sharon. Arik Sharon had left, I guess, a loaded gun in his house, probably more than one, as a very high-ranking general of the Israeli army. This was before he went into politics. And unfortunately, his son played with his gun and accidentally killed himself. And of course, Sharon was devastated. And the Rebbe sent him a letter basically saying, if your child had this amazing opportunity to go to an amazing school, an amazing opportunity, and he so wants to go, and it'll be so good for him, you wouldn't let your child go? You wouldn't want your child to do what's best for him and what he wants? There's only one problem, one issue, which is you can't talk to him anymore. I guess phone service doesn't work there, maybe like in Ethiopia. But your child is happy. And he's so happy he has this opportunity. So you let him go and you miss him, but you can send care packages. You can't call, but you can send care packages. And the commandments you do are the care packages for the soul. Because once a person passes away, they can't do any more mitzvahs. They learn Torah, but no more mitzvahs. No more adding to their bank account of good, of merits, a reward. They have no way to help themselves, only through us and the good they did in their lifetime and the good we continue to do for them. So that's a really major point I wanted to explain about care packages and their need and how we do them. We'll first do a few other things. After a person passes away, the soul gradually detaches from this world. Now, some people, not everyone, but some people have an awareness, some level of awareness that they're passing away. Some people it's more obvious, some people it's more subtle, sometimes it comes out in dreams. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe is very interesting. A year before he passed away, a year, in his signature, his name was Yosef Yitzchak. So there are two Yuds, the Yud of Yosef and the Yud of Yitzchak. He started making more pronounced the Yuds. If you look at his signature, you see, oh, those Yuds look a little like it's a signature, but the Yuds look a little more carefully drawn. And as the months went on and on, those Yuds got more and more clear until he was writing the Yud like the Yud of a Sefer Torah. It's called Ksav Ashuris. It's a signature, but the two Yuds were like the Yuds of a Sefer Torah. And that was the week he passed away on Yud, on the 10th of Shvat. So was he trying to allude something? I don't think so. It was very obvious, but not that anyone knew what it was hinting to. It might just have been a way of expressing some awareness of what's going to happen to him on the Yud, on the 10th of Shvat.
I have a question. Wait, you mean subconsciously people know, or you get this like feeling that you're going?
I've heard so many different stories from people when I talk about these topics. So I've heard so many wild stories. So I definitely have heard people who have clearly had people they love very clearly had a sense. Not that they were sick, just like a sense something was happening, something was going to happen to them. Some idea of passing. Some people had dreams and then they woke up and shared them with people that were clearly implying something like that was going to happen. Some people it's just like a subliminal awareness. Like they were aware, it wasn't completely subconscious because then we wouldn't know about it because they passed away. So they had enough of awareness that they shared it with other people. Just a sense. I mean, we say that the soul does have this awareness, but I don't know if that awareness for most people is just minutes before or hours before. But for some people, it's much earlier. And for some people, it's very clear. And for some people, it's not. I don't know if anyone's ever experienced something like that with someone they know and they love. But I've
I
definitely...
have.
You have, Yael?
I have. I don't know, and I don't know if this is like general knowledge or just with Moroccans, but supposedly the last 40 days, your neshama is in between worlds, and it's like 1 foot in each world. And a lot of times the people will say things like they don't recognize their homes, they don't recognize where their surroundings. And my mother's father did that. And then my father also, like the last week or so, like he would wake up and he'd be like, I know this is my home, but it doesn't look like my home. Things like that. But we didn't put it together until afterwards, obviously. But yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Wait, so why does that happen? Is that so the body or the soul can kind of know and not be in shock when it detaches?
So how Yael is explaining it, which is sort of, I think it could be sort of like a preliminary awareness, which is sort of like preparing the body, preparing the soul, could be preparing other people. There definitely are things like that we see more clearly with some people, less clearly with others, but we definitely see it enough times that we know it happens. Something else we see is people that are dying, and it's very obvious they're waiting usually for someone to come. People that just hanging on, waiting, and then someone comes and then they pass.
Wait, you mean someone physically from this world comes, or someone from the other world pulls them down?
No, physically. Like I've
heard
just heard
people
so many
say that, like,
people that are like, oh, my father was so sick and we couldn't even understand what he was waiting for. All of his children had already come, and then like some couple he knew came and visited, and then he passed away. And it was like he was waiting for that couple. or people waiting for their children to come. People,
Do
a,
you
wo-
think a person has a
a woman
choice
I
like
know,
that?
a woman I know, she was a woman I have a relationship with. Her father was very sick, and the doctor said he was going to pass away that night. And she was terrified because she was the only sibling. This is a Chabad lady, and all of her other siblings were all over the world on shlichus. She was the only one with him in New York, and she was just, for some reason, she was just so scared that he should pass away without, just with her, without the rest of the family. And he just somehow he just stayed alive that night. Like she and him, they were waiting. And the next day, all of his children had arrived, and they all were there. And then that night, he passed away. It was just very clear, like, okay, he waited. He waited for all the children to come, and then he passed away. Again, it doesn't happen with everyone, but it happens enough. We've seen it enough that sometimes there is something. What about bodies that aren't buried properly? It is the most tremendous, tremendous pain to the soul. Cremation is the worst thing. God forbid. God forbid. If you could ever stop someone from being cremated, it's like there's organizations that I know people, have been involved with a number of people to get them to a Jewish burial and not a cremation, which unfortunately is the way of the secular world because it's much cheaper. And what difference does it make? And I know people that fund it sometimes, not always times, sometimes just sort of have to pull the money together however you can. But it's just such a huge, huge issue. Literally, if a body is cremated, you don't sit Shiva. It's that bad.
What about the people who were like taken hostage and died al Kiddush
That
Hashem?
is why it is such a great thing. I'm sure if you're even a little bit following, you've seen several times the soldiers made very brave and daring rescue missions to rescue dead bodies. Recently, they brought back 6 bodies. They knew they were dead, and it was a very dangerous mission, and where they were going was very heavily guarded. So why did they risk their living lives to bring back dead bodies? Because it's that important. It's that much part of our value system that the body needs to be properly buried, and the enormous pain for the soul of the body that's not. It's a huge pain. It's a huge tragedy. It's a tragedy we can't even fathom. And that's why it's so, so, so important. Absolutely important.
But how does the, sorry for so many questions, I guess I'm just very interested. How, like what had the body can't, I mean, the soul can't like move on. It can't
I,
rest. It can't go to
I
Lahava. Like
wouldn't
what,
say the soul can't move on, but I would definitely say the soul is not at peace. Like certain
which
times,
means what though? What does that actually mean? Like who can, like, does
the
it
soul,
matter?
because the soul, does it matter to us that the soul's not at peace? If you care about the person, it matters. Of course it matters to you if you
No,
care.
no, meaning for them, for that person who was
Yes,
taken hostage and
yes, God forbid, it definitely matters. Yes, they're not at peace when they pass away and their soul is languishing somewhere in Gaza. Everything is so different. I mean, again, as I'm saying, everything is very personalized, but we see the general pattern. Someone once came by the Rebbe. I saw this video clip. I literally saw the Rebbe saying this to the person. And he said it was 45 years after the Holocaust. I guess it was like 1990. He walked by in a line and he was talking to the Rebbe. And he said that all of his family was wiped out in the Holocaust. He was the only survivor. And one of his brothers actually survived the Holocaust and died a week later, which happened to many people. Some were murdered, like when they tried to go back to their home, and many died because they were so emaciated and sick and disease ridden, or they were so emaciated and then the soldiers had no clue what to give them and they gave them foods that caused them to die. Many died after. So I don't know what the circumstance was, but this one brother who actually lived through all the torture, he died about a week later. And he said to the Rebbe, since then, in 45 years, every week I dream about this brother at least 2, if not 3 times. He said, everyone else in my family, I had other brothers. I dream about them every once in a while. But this brother, 2 to 3 times a week, I dream about it. What's happening? And the Rebbe said, I thought it was a very interesting answer. Obviously, it was the answer in the situation. The Rebbe said, do you have a yurt site for them? And the man said, I just do a general yurt site for everyone on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is my day of yurt site for my entire family that got killed in the Holocaust. And the Rebbe said, this soul, this man, this brother, he needs a yurt site. Figure it out. Consult with the rabbi. Like he basically knew when he was released and it was a week later, maybe, he's going to be off by a day or 2. Figure out the day, create a day, and that day celebrate with all the laws, speak to a Rav, and celebrate a yurt site. And the Rebbe said, and if you do, his soul will be at peace. His soul is at peace. he'll stop coming. Like he's coming to you because he's a troubled soul. Now, why was he troubled? Because he didn't have yard sight? I don't know. Obviously, there are many people that don't have a proper yard sight. But for this person, he needed that energy of the yard sight. And he wasn't getting it because his brother just lumped the whole family together and did one yard sight for everyone. So what does it mean that it's a troubled soul because the body's not buried? The soul's in pain. The soul is connected to the body. That's why when there's a ultimate resurrection of the dead, we go back to those bodies, not to somebody else's body, not to a new body. We go back to that body. However it died, we go back to it. If you want to connect to the person that passed away, the strongest way is go to the cemetery. Go, Beis HaChaim, we call it in Hebrew. Go to the grave. Why? Why am I going to a grave? Because the soul has a connection to the grave, because that's where the body is. So the fact that the body is not buried and doesn't have Gvuras Yisrael, for this matter, doesn't have Gvura at all, is a great pain for the soul.
And a body that's cremated, they come back how?
Through the luz bone. It says the luz bone cannot be destroyed. And through that luz bone, the body will be reborn, regrown from that luz bone.
Then what's the big deal then?
Because again, it's the greatest dishonor to the body to burn it, to destroy it. I'm saying to the degree that halacha, practical law, we do not sit shiva for someone who is cremated. It's considered that bad, that horrible, that much of a disgrace. We don't sit shiva if a person suicided. We don't sit shiva if a person was cremated. It's literally that bad. So it's a horrific thing, and we do everything we can in our power to stop something like that from happening. Again, all these things, like I'm saying, maybe for one person, one soul, it would be more of a pain. It would be just like all of us. All of us are different. I mean, if you're exhausted, one person has a backache, one person has a lower backache, an upper backache, a headache, a migraine, a stomach ache. Well, we're all suffering from the same thing, but our bodies have different points of weakness, different things that are going to express the pain our body's having in not getting enough sleep. If a body is not buried, alone if a body's cremated, or if a body's buried not with a Jewish burial, all of these are various things that cause tremendous pain to the soul. And some souls will act it out one way, and some souls will act it out another way. Maybe just some souls will be more painful, some souls will be less. But to all souls, it's a tremendous, tremendous, tremendous pain.
So what about all the Holocaust victims?
So
that really, some of them, we don't even know where their bodies are,
100%. And there
Same
were
thing.
people after the Holocaust that put tremendous effort and resources in trying to bury what could be buried. There were people that really, that was their thing. Of course, there was people that went around trying to rescue the children that were, in monasteries and convents. And there were people that tried to bury. And 100%.
I have a question. If that soul is not able to rest or be at peace, is that soul able to come back into another person? It could be that a person who comes into this world very disturbed or just wired in a very either depressed or anxiety ridden, or could it be that soul maybe just was never buried properly?
It could be, or it could be other things. Many things we look at in ourselves. I do this with myself all the time. So not all the time. I mean, sometimes I can look at something myself and I can be like, that is so, why do you react that way? It must be a previous lifetime issue. I literally have this with myself and with other people that I speak to. Meaning we are a compilation of all of our lifetimes. We're chapters in a book. We're very old. We've been here many times. We have a lot of strength. That's why we're tested a lot, because we have a lot of strength, because we have many lifetimes that we've all experienced. And we definitely carry over pains and unfinished business from previous lifetimes. So it is completely possible for the reason you just said, and it could completely be for other reasons. And it might not be for that. It might be something that happened in this lifetime, but it's definitely possible that a person is carrying baggage, pain, as well as, of course, all the unfinished business from previous lifetimes, and that's impacting and coloring themselves now. Absolutely. And could the pain be? It could be. There could be many reasons. And anything is possible because we have no clue, because we don't know what our previous lifetimes were. So we can't know sometimes, why do I react this way? Why am I acting so irrationally in this situation? Nothing happened to me in my life this should be a trigger. Well, maybe not in this lifetime, but maybe in a previous lifetime. That's
Can
possible.
you fix it? Is there a way to heal it if, let's say, it is from that body that has never been buried properly? Like, is there, or like,
If
it's
a person
stuck?
has a reincarnation, one of the purposes of reincarnation is to fix. So that means there would be the possibility of fixing. By what? I don't know, because I don't know what the issue is. In general, we know what's most difficult for us is the reason why we're here. That's why it's most difficult, because, our evil inclination doesn't mind us doing many other wonderful things as long as we don't do that. So that is the best key we know to figure out why we're here.
Oh my gosh, wait, I'd say one thing. I was talking to this guy and he was trying to figure out, he goes, I don't know why I keep doing the same thing over again. I know my problem is, I just don't get it. And I'm like, and I told him what you said. I'm like, well, whatever's hardest, he said something like, I don't even know why I'm here. I keep trying to, whatever he was saying to me, so I said to him, I said, well, whatever's hardest for you is probably your purpose here. And he goes, you know what? And he called me back and he told me that, like, you said something to me that really changed my perspective on my whole life. This guy's like 60 maybe. And I'm like, what I say? I said so many things to you. It's like the hardest thing for me is probably what my purpose is. And he goes, that really like hit me so hard. And he just like, he goes, I feel like I'm gonna, somehow it's hard for him to learn. It's hard for him to this and that, but everything else he's fine with. No problem, like changing everything but that. I'm like, well, that's probably why you came back. And it really just changed him. And I don't know, it's just very powerful for him. So I'm happy you shared that with me.
You were Hashem Shliach. You were the God's emissary. That's beautiful. But it's true for all of us. So when we look, sometimes when we could see something, we might not understand why. And it could simply be because in all of our lifetimes, we never did this right. And a soul keeps coming back until it fulfills or studies every one of the commandments. So maybe in all my previous lifetimes, I never did this mitzvah properly. Well, this mitzvah is going to be really hard for me because I have to do it this lifetime. Or maybe in my previous lifetimes, I always messed up this issue. I kept coming back and I kept messing it up. We're at the end of the road. Mashiach's coming. So it's really hard for me. It's really challenging. It really drives me crazy. Embrace it. It's probably why you're here. And we're all here generally to bring redemption. We're the generation of bringing redemption. We know how to do it. We're coming back to do it again. But individually, when we look at those things that are so difficult, often irrationally difficult, like, why does it bother me so much? I do everything else. Why can't I do that? Why won't I do that? Why does that make me so upset, so nervous, so tense? Maybe it's because that's why I'm supposed to be here. Maybe that's because that's what I'm supposed to accomplish. So it is a very, very practical way to look at ourselves, because we are a product of so many previous lifetimes, and say, no, I'm not clueless. I actually do have a clue to figure out what I'm doing here this time around. Okay, so we were saying that some souls have an awareness before they pass away, and Yael said this idea of 40 days, which is very interesting. There's also the concept of people giving life to other people through their passing that we usually think of course, with very, great, like, biblical concepts, but it also exists in more modern times. It says that Adam Harishon, Adam, the first man, he should have lived a perfect existence. Perfect is a multiple of 10. So he should have lived 1,000 years, but he lived 930 because he gave 70 years to David HaMelech, King David, who he saw was supposed to be a stillborn. And then for some reason, the forces of prosecution didn't allow that to go through, even though Adam did truly lose his 70 years. So then Avram, Yaakov, and Yosef all chipped in. Avram gave 5 years, and Yaakov gave 28, and Yosef gave 37. And together they gave the 70 years to create life for David. So it's truly a concept, and I'm saying, I know in modern days, people can do it as well sometimes. This idea of saying, I want to take some of my years and give it to someone else. So there is some forces here that we don't usually see, but that are here and that do impact. When the soul passes away, like Yael was saying about 40 days before, is almost like preliminary stages. When the person passes away, it's also in stages, which is parallel to the stages of mourning, right? We said the most intense mourning is before the burial, then the Shiva within the Shiva. The first 3 days is more intense than the next 4 days. This is really paralleling the soul's detaching from this world. When a person passes away, they ascend gradually and are greeted by all their close friends and relatives who have already passed. And those friends and relatives will be with the soul and support the soul through the judgment that's going to happen. I remember when I had an aunt who suddenly passed away, very, very suddenly. She had an aneurysm in her heart and passed away in like 3 hours. And I went to New York for her funeral, and my father's buried in the same cemetery, the same Beis HaChaim. And I remember I had time, I got there before anyone else because I went straight to the cemetery. And I remember going to my father and davening and telling him to please give regards to my grandparents. Because I know he and my grandparents are all going to greet my aunt, so he should please send regards to my grandparents because I never get to where they're buried. They're buried somewhere in Connecticut. It's that real. The soul ascends with the support of the friends and relatives, all that love, to what we call the Beis Din Shel Maila, the heavenly court. The soul at the heavenly court is basically shown a replay of their entire life, and that creates the judgment. Anything a person did tshuva for in this lifetime, there's no negative consequence in the next world. Tshuva, repentance, is an unbelievable gift of God. It's an insane gift because it really makes no sense. I totally mess up, and then I just do this tshuva, and then it's all wiped away, and then I do it again, and then I do tshuva, and it's all wiped away. But God is that gracious to us. He gives us this crazy gift of tshuva, so we can cleanse ourselves and not need to be cleansed afterwards. Now, even though the soul knows what's going to happen, the soul knows the heavenly court, the soul knows there might be cleansing, probably there'll be the cleansing of Gehenna. The soul doesn't fear death. The soul doesn't desire death, and the soul doesn't fear death. It doesn't desire death because the soul understands that here is where she can serve God. Here is where she can give to God. Here is where she connects literally to God. Here's where it's at. Here's where she creates Mashiach. So the soul doesn't want to leave per se. Here she gives to God. Here she makes a difference. Here, she's the player and not the spectator. Here she connects and is one with God himself. So the soul's not looking to die. But at the same time, the soul doesn't fear death at all. Because ultimately, to the soul, death means Gan Eden. Death means being able to experience love and fear of God for real. Because even the greatest tzaddik can't experience in this world what the souls experience above. Like our bodies just wouldn't be able to handle the intensity of that emotion. The soul knows there's Gan Eden and basking in all the godliness of everything she did in this lifetime. So it's a great option, so to speak. So there's no desire for death. Here is where she wants to be. And there's no fear of death, because death ultimately means being and experiencing the reward, the closeness to God, based on all the good that she did in this lifetime. When a person's at the Beis Din Shel Maila, they're asked 6 questions, meaning we get a whole instant replay of our entire life. But we're told there are 6 questions that everyone's going to have to answer. Did you do business with honesty and integrity? Everyone has to respond to that. Did you fix set times for studying Torah?
We have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout our life, we have different points that we, I guess, achieve that. So how do you answer that? If you didn't do what you're supposed to do at the age of 20, but at 50 or the life you did, you answer
Did the person do tshuva?
So if a person did teshuva, then you can answer.
It would be the end, meaning it's
that
like,
you did.
what is your life? It's the totality. So if a person was dishonest, and then at 50 they suddenly woke up and turned around their life and were honest for the next 40 years, did they do business with honesty and integrity? Absolutely. That's the gift of tshuva. That's the gift of tshuva. But if they didn't do tshuva, but like let's say somebody was dishonest, but then just various things happened, so they no longer had the ability to be dishonest, but it's not like they changed. They just didn't have that ability anymore. So then they didn't do tshuva and they weren't honest. But if they did tshuva as shown by their behavior for the rest of their life, then yes, they can say they were honest.
But can't you only do teshuva if, like, I think you always taught us that Hashem put you back in the exact same situation, and is very creative with how he can set you up, and that's how you know that you passed. If you
Absolutely.
know, so what? So you're saying if a person doesn't have the opportunity, then that means what?
They would only have the opportunity if they do the tshuva, meaning a person is dishonest. Okay, let's take what happens nowadays in our world. Person is massively dishonest. They get caught. They're thrown in jail. Well, they stop being dishonest because they have no ability to be dishonest, not because they repented on any level. But if a person does tshuva, they feel tremendous remorse and regret. The bigger what they did wrong, the deeper they feel that remorse and regret. They confess. Confession is not to a human being, it's to God. They speak to God. They confess. There's a, vidoy, and you could just say it with your own words. And they completely commit to never doing this again. Only when you do those 3 steps, remorse, confession, commitment, then Hashem sends you a test. Now, again, let's take this example of this person who was dishonest. He gets caught. He's in jail. Now, he no longer has opportunities to be dishonest. He didn't feel bad and stop. He just no longer has the opportunity. But let's say, as he's sitting in prison, he starts reflecting on his life, and he really starts regretting. And he has tremendous remorse. And he turns to God, and he completely confesses, and he completely commits he will never do something like that again. Well, what opportunity does he have? He's in jail anyway. God, as we said, is very creative and will figure out something in jail. Dishonesty exists on every level of society. And I'm sure there are opportunities in jail that God could create for him to be honest or dishonest to do his tshuva. So when a person does tshuva and then commits, and let's say again, this jail situation, so it's not going to be rolling in the big bucks and making businesses or stealing, scamming people's monies, but in the very small world of the prison he's in, if for the rest of his lifetime, which let's just say lasts until then, he maintains his honesty in the dishonest prison's culture, he did his tshuva. And he could say he lived with honesty because he did tshuva and lived the rest of his life with that tshuva. But if a person doesn't, then it's a very big problem. The fact that these are the 6 questions, I only did 2 so far, obviously, but they highlight, obviously, we're told them to highlight things that are really important. It's like you're going to take a test and beforehand, you're told the questions. Your kids are taking the driver's test and someone gives them the 20 questions they have to answer to pass. These are the questions. Now, it doesn't mean that all the rest of our life is not relevant. It's all relevant. But these are universally relevant. Were you honest? Did you do business with honesty and integrity? Did you fix times to study Torah? Did you participate in the commandment of having children? Now, obviously, people could try and be childless. They tried. They could say they tried. But we literally fulfill the commandment when we have at least a son and a daughter. And those children have, now I've heard different versions of what has to happen in the next generation. Does a son have to have a son and the daughter has to have a daughter? Does a son have to have a daughter and the daughter has to have a son? Does it not make a difference as long as each one of them has at least one? There's different, various opinions. But bottom line, the person has to have at least a son and a daughter, and then they have to have at least a grandson and a granddaughter from 2 different children. From at least one child of one gender from the daughter and a child from the different gender from a son. So a person can say, well, it wasn't my fault you only gave me girls, God. Or God forbid it wasn't my fault I wasn't able to have children. But obviously God knows that, but you tried. But did you fulfill? Did you participate in that commandment? Did you await the redemption? Tzipisa Yeshua. Were you focused on the coming of Mashiach and doing everything you could to make it happen? That's one of the 6 questions. Did you engage in the pursuit of wisdom? Did you strive for wisdom? Again, God helps some of us have more ability to learn and more access and more wise people to be with and gain wisdom from. Did you engage in the pursuit of wisdom? And did you have fear of heaven? I don't know if it's unfortunate or fortunate, but the reality is you can be an Orthodox Jew and not have a lot of fear of heaven, not have a lot of Yiras Shamayim. It's a culture. It's how you were raised. It's how your family lives. It's how your friends live. It's how you live. Did you have fear of heaven? Did you have a sense of God? Did you have Yiras Shamayim? So these are the 6 questions we're asked. Now, there's a famous vignette with Reb Zusha van Napoli that many people know because it's so to the point, where Reb Zusha, who was personally a great tzaddik, but was very humble in terms of his self-assessment, and he would say, I have no fear that when I pass away, they're going to tell me, Zusha, why weren't you Moshe Rabbeinu? I mean, Zusha's no Moses, we know that. But I have fear what they will ask, Zusha, why weren't you Zusha? Meaning, another, if you will, general question or assessment, maybe more than a question, is God knows what he gave us. He knows all the strength, all the beauty, all the abilities, all the resources. And the question will be, did you actualize your potential? Did you fulfill who you were supposed to be? That's a general assessment, a general question. And we can now think of it very easily because we have videos. How people understood this 1,000 years ago, they just, however they imagined it. By us, we just envisioned this great movie playing, the movie reality show of our entire life. And we're told if you harm someone who has passed away, that soul will be there during those moments. For this reason, it's very important to forgive people who hurt you and passed away. Because when someone hurt you and passed away, they will suffer for that. You hurt a Jew, that's huge. And since we don't want to be the catalyst for someone else suffering, it's very good to forgive. I personally experienced this very strongly. Someone that hurt me very, very, very much and passed away. And I remember turning to God very strongly and saying, I forgive. I don't want anyone suffering because of me. I forgive. I forgive. I forgive. Forgiving doesn't mean it was okay. It means you forgive. Now, obviously, if you can forgive and forget, it's easier because it's easier to forgive if you forget, that you don't hold it in your heart. And sometimes the person can't forget, but even if we can't forget, we can still forgive. So the deceased shouldn't suffer because of our pain.
So it helps the soul?
Yes, it's very important for the soul, because if you don't forgive, then obviously they didn't do tshuva. Because if they had done tshuva, they would totally have asked you for forgiveness and you would have given it. If you hadn't given that, if a person hurts another person, well, of course, we're told the law is that if someone knows they hurt someone and 3 separate times on 3 separate days they ask forgiveness and the person refuses to forgive them, God will forgive them for that. But assuming that never happened, if a person hurt another Jew, it's considered a huge thing, a huge pain, because every Jew is so powerful. I mean, every one of us is like God's only child. So if God's only child is walking around in pain because of you, well, you definitely are going to suffer for that. And there's many stories of people suffering in this world for that. But it's also something that the soul will have an accounting for. And that's why if someone passes away that did things to hurt you, it's very gracious and wonderful to forgive them, so they shouldn't have to suffer for that. For all of the things we know we have done wrong, we really have the opportunity now to do tshuva. I mean, God didn't create angels. He has angels. He did create angels. Sorry. But he created something even more special, man, which by definition means we mess up, and we have an evil inclination, and we have an animal soul, and we have clay feet, and we're human, and sometimes we're tired, so we mess up more, or we're weak, we're upset, we're stressed, we've got a lot on our plate, we're human, we mess up. And God said, I'm going to give you this amazing gift called tshuva, which actually really makes no sense. It's very interesting. It says in the Midrash that they ask chachma, wisdom, if a person sins, what should he do? He said, whatever. It's just sinners are pursued by evil. Then they ask prophecy. If someone sins, what should they do? He says, well, the sinner should die. And they ask Torah, what happens? What's the punishment? What happens? Oh, he has to bring this korban. And then they ask God, what happens if a person sinned? said, do tshuva and be forgiven. So it didn't come from Torah or prophecy or wisdom. It's beyond that. It's irrational. It's higher than that. It's a gift from Hashem himself that we can do tshuva. And it's a really great day to think about this, because it's this Shabbos is Shabbos Mevarchim. Ready or not, Elul is coming. This coming Tuesday and Wednesday. And we have an entire month when we're really supposed to be soul searching. That's a real thing. It's not a term. It's something real that we do. We think into what we have done wrong. And we really try to get closer to Hashem. And we really try to do tshuva. Really try to completely repent for anything we've done wrong. And really get closer and closer and closer to Hashem. Do more and more and more right. And this is such an unbelievable gift when we think about it in the context of our current discussion. Because just think, in the real world, as we know it, if you mess up, you pay the price. That's life. But here, literally, we can repent and God expunges the record, removes the transgression. It's not in the court case. It gets deleted from that video. It's just gone. That's a tremendous, 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 tremendous gift of tshuva. Now, obviously, for most people, they didn't do tshuva for everything. Hopefully they did tshuva, but maybe not for everything. And most people, after they pass away, obviously not a tzaddik, but most regular people will have some after-death cleansing. But we take comfort that it doesn't take too long for a regular person. And for a regular person, as we assume most people are good, for a regular person, we assume that we give it up to 11 months. That's a general demarcation line. We say by 11 months, they're already going to have reached Gan Eden.
Well, I have a question about Gan Eden. So it sounds heavy. It sounds great. It sounds really great. So my question is it Gan Eden better, or is it better to wait to be here when Mashiach comes? Is that even better than Gan Eden?
That's a very good question. That's a really deep question. So the answer is, it's a good question, and I'll try to make the answer concise, but if it's not clear, let me know. There's 3 worlds. This world, life as we know it, what we call, in English I'll call it the afterlife. In Hebrew it's called Olam Haba, the Gan Eden reality. And then Mashiach, which is also called Olam Haba, but it means the world of Mashiach. Each world has different advantages and disadvantages. For the soul, okay, now we're just thinking in terms of the soul, just in terms of the context of your question. For the soul, there's different advantages and disadvantages of being here and being in Gan Eden, Olam Haba, the afterlife. The tremendous advantage of being here is here, and uniquely here and only here, the soul connects and is one with God. No angel is one with God. No celestial being bigger than an angel is one with God. No spiritual world is one with God. The only opportunity to be, not godliness. Godliness, there's lots of godliness going on above. But God himself, literally him, only occurs to a neshama beguf, a soul in a body, in this physical world, a living soul and body, serving. In the act of a mitzvah, right now in this moment, us, because we're all studying Torah. That opportunity is only possible in this world. As well as only in this world we can give to Hashem, only in this world we can add godliness, only in this world we can create, only in this world we can do more good. So for all those reasons, this world has tremendous advantages over the world to come. And that's why our Chachamim say in Pirkei Avos, a very strange statement, Yafa sha'achas b'tshuva ma'asim tovim v'olam hazeh mikol chayei olam haba. It's yafa, it's finer. 1 hour of service in this world than an eternity in the afterlife. And we're that's a massive jip. The afterlife is reward, and 1 hour here is better. We know what here feels like. 1 hour here is better than my eternity. Doesn't sound like a very good eternity. So the answer is exactly this concept. The next world is reward. That reward feels great and is a pleasure, is all the pleasures of this world. If you could get them all in one shot, they cannot compare to the pleasure of the next world. So in terms of literally pleasure of the soul, which pleasure of the soul means connection to God, the godliness a soul will experience, the soul doesn't feel like almost any godliness here. We don't feel anything. We're so blocked. We feel very little. The soul in Gan Eden, oh my gosh,
Like you could
beyond the
breathe
world
again.
ecstasy. So, in terms of my desire to be one with God, there's nothing better than this world. But if God took us away from this world and the soul's in Gan Eden, the soul doesn't have the ability to be one with God. The soul doesn't have the ability to give to God. The soul doesn't have the ability to serve and to create and to make Mashiach and all those amazing things. But the pleasure is unbelievable. So therefore, the best option is not this world where we do but don't feel and deal with all the stresses of this world. The next world where you're basically waiting, it's reward, but it's, you know, you're not accomplishing anything. You're not adding, you're not helping God, you're not serving, you're rewarding, you're being rewarded. So the best option is Mashiach. Because by Mashiach, it's not a reincarnation, it's a resurrection. It's Tchias HaMesim. So every soul, ultimately, it will happen. And it's interesting how Yael said before about 40 days, because it will happen over 40 years. But in the end, over 40 years, every single Jew who ever was will come back, including every stillborn, including every miscarriage, including the greatest sinners. JC was a Jew, he's coming back. Every single Jew will come back. Every single Jew will come back. Will be a soul and a body, therefore will be able to do mitzvahs, will touch Hashem, be one literally, not with godliness, with God, and will experience it. So you'll have like all the advantage of this world and
You'll
all
have
the
everything.
advantage of the next world. You're touching, you're one with, you're serving, you're giving, and you're experiencing what that godliness is.
In the form of a person, not just a soul, right?
Exactly. And that actually goes back to why, going back to what Shira was saying about like why is it so important, the body, because this body of mine worked hard in this world, worked hard to serve Hashem, worked hard to bring Mashiach, worked hard to do good. So it's not fair that that body shouldn't be rewarded, that body shouldn't also enjoy Mashiach. Mashiach isn't just an experience for your soul, it's an experience for your body. That's actually, it's debated, are we going to eat or not when Mashiach comes, right? I think we discussed this before and we said yes. Why? Because the body likes to eat, because it's good for the body and the body deserves it because she works so hard. So that body is important, and that soul in that body are going to serve and experience the God they are connecting to as they serve. So that's the ultimate. That's the answer. That's the ultimate. But in terms of, I think what maybe also we're alluding to, like a person being in this world when Mashiach happens, or a person being a soul above when Mashiach happens, it's much better to be in this world when Mashiach happens than a soul. Because if you're a soul, you're like looking down and watching the action. You're seeing, you're aware of it, but you're not in it, seeing something on your TV screen, but you're not there. It's not the same like being there. The greatest tzaddikim, we're told, will have immediate Tchias HaMesim, immediate resurrection. So the great, like we're told, Moshe, Aaron, all those great tzaddikim, they'll all come back right away. Even before like we get to the Beis HaMikdash, they'll already be with us. But for regular people, it's a process. So they'll see it, they'll be so joyous, they'll know their turn's going to come too, but they're going to have a process. We're alive. We get to experience it, every single second from the first incredible minutes.